Good afternoon, everybody, or, well, there could be some good mornings if people are up early in America. So it's just gone 12 here in the United Kingdom. It'll be 1 p.m. I suspect in Europe, and in Asia Pac it'll be pretty late into the evening. So thank you for joining us, everyone. We've got a very exciting session to go through today. My name is Tim O'Neill. I'll do some introductory slides in a second, but just a bit of housekeeping first. All your lines are muted, which is great. And if you want to ask any questions during the course of the presentation, there is a chat facility. You should be able to just hover over the screen and it should pop up a chat window, and just make sure you ask the question to everyone if you want it to be for everyone to see what the question is. My colleagues on the call with me, Manisha, she'll be leading most of the presentation. Either way, we will try and answer some of the questions in the chat window if it's appropriate, or take them live during the session, and of course ask any at the end if we have time or if there's questions. So that's a bit of housekeeping. So ask questions in the chat window if you can. But other than that, let's go for it. So we have a pretty compact agenda today. Obviously, you've joined today to hear about BIAN or BIAN, depending on how you pronounce it. So we're going to give you a take on BIAN as far as how we see it fitting within the practice of enterprise architecture, and in particular, of course, how we support it through our toolset, which is called ABACUS, which I'm sure most of you know about. We'll do some background work. Manisha will go through most of that stuff. We're planning to do a live demo, so hopefully the demonstration goes well and everyone's internet stays up. And so certainly we'll record the session though, so anyone who misses out or their line drops out or anything like that, we'll provide a recording of it later to them. That's fine. And like I said, there's opportunity for questions either along the way or save them to the end. So again, feel free to type anything in that chat window and we should see it live. Okay. A little bit of background into the company. Avolution's the company, or Avolution, depending on again how you want to pronounce it. Our product is called ABACUS. We've been around for quite a while, so we actually literally just had our 18-year anniversary last week. I've been with the company since it started, so certainly I've got a lot of experience in the enterprise architecture field. I've worked on lots of major projects around the world, and FTSE companies and all that sort of stuff. The company is expanded around the world. We've got 7 offices now. We have sort of headquarters in each of the regions, so we do certainly follow the sun, as one might say, in terms of the EMEAs, the Americas, and the Asia Pac region. We do have customers all around the world, so we're over 100. We have customers in over 100 countries now. So I'm quite, I can see some of the names that are familiar to me up the top there, and definitely I know that we've got people dialing in from everywhere. So that's wonderful to have you join us, and obviously it's a good global community that we support. We're a leader in the Magic Quadrant for Gartner and the Forrester Wave, so certainly we're very proud of that, and we look forward to that continuing. And like I say, we have companies all around the world. With that, I'll actually pass to Manisha to introduce herself, and she'll actually take the slides for the next few slides before we get into the demonstration. So over to you, Manisha.
Thank you. I'm Manisha Sanasi. I'm a senior consultant at Avolution. I've been with the company for over 7 years, and in that time I've worked with clients across various sectors, including finance, insurance, transport, and government. So firstly, a quick introduction into BIAN. BIAN is the Banking Industry Architecture Network. This is a framework specifically targeted to the banking industry and combines knowledge from banks, solution providers, and educational institutions in order to come up with a best practice service operations standard for the banking industry. Whilst all banks will operate differently, there are certain similarities in the business functions and services provided by each bank. Therefore, BIAN has put together a standard set of these functions and services, which will be common across most banks. BIAN provides a service landscape, which is a reference model of business areas, such as sales and service, risk and compliance. These then break down into business domains, such as trade banking, loans and deposits, regulations and compliance. And these then break down further into service domains, which end customers may be familiar with. These include current accounts, mortgage loans, and savings accounts. But it also allows banks to develop their own enterprise architecture model as a tailored version of the building blocks.
The chat facility, you should be able to just hop.
So here we've attached an image of the service landscape, but there is an interactive ArchiMate version of this model available at the BIAN website. Because BIAN is heavily service-focused, it can be thought of as a service-oriented architecture. And this is an architecture in which the underlying functions, products, technologies, and logic are abstracted, and only what is required to run the service is published. We can, of course, model to any level of detail in ABACUS, as ABACUS allows us to connect different objects such as applications, departments, and technologies to the service. But ABACUS is also flexible enough to let us choose which level we wish to publish down to. So why the need for a reference model? A large proportion of IT budgets within banks is spent on legacy technology maintenance. And since banks often customize a large proportion of their software, this makes it even more difficult to maintain. An industry standard reference model helps to highlight which areas banks should focus on. So what are the benefits of using BIAN? There are many benefits of using a framework such as BIAN, and these include being able to gain increased knowledge of common services across all banks, being able to assess vendor maturity and leadership in the development and support of applications, which then relate to areas within the service landscape, and also being able to show that the bank is a forward-looking institution which implements a digital or technology-focused approach to enterprise architecture. So now we'll go on to using BIAN in ABACUS. ABACUS is split into two main products. And as you can see from the tree visualization on the right, we have ABACUS Studio at the bottom and ABACUS Enterprise at the top. ABACUS Studio can be thought of as the roots that hold everything together in the tree. This is where the enterprise architects will do their modeling, they'll draw diagrams and produce reports. And at the top we have ABACUS Enterprise, which is our dashboarding solution. And this incorporates rich visualizations, including interactive pie charts, Sankey diagrams, tree maps, and Gantt charts that can be presented to stakeholders. It also allows users to collaborate on enterprise data across the organization through use of editable catalogs and co-authoring. There are also various data integrations allowing users to round-trip their data with Excel, SharePoint, Google Sheets, Visio, and various CMDBs, including ServiceNow. In the middle, we have a collaboration server, which connects both ABACUS Studio and ABACUS Enterprise. And it provides a shared repository that enables all ABACUS users to collaborate from a single version of the truth. And finally, there is an analytics engine where we can run simulations and algorithms. So now we'll pass over to ABACUS Enterprise, which is our dashboarding solution. So firstly, we have a dashboard showing the BIAN service landscape. Here we can see green blocks for the business areas, such as sales and service, operations and execution, risk and compliance. And then underneath those, we have the business domains, such as loans and deposits, cards, trade banking. And then within each of these areas, we have the different service domains. So there's quite a lot of service domains. Here you can see current accounts, mortgage loans, savings accounts. And whilst this may look like a PDF version of the service landscape, it is actually an interactive version. I can zoom in to look into these in a bit more detail. And actually, all the content behind each of these services is managed within ABACUS. This is simply a rendering of over 300 of the services, where each will have its own metadata captured elsewhere. So I can click on one of these services and view a catalogue of the full service catalogue. Here we have a tabular view of the data, and it shows a lot of text attributes, including the description, business role, examples of use. And then over on the right, we have related objects such as related processes, related departments, and related applications. In order to further analyze which of the areas of the service landscape an organization has implemented, we can run some analysis such as a complexity algorithm, which will sum the number of connections to the objects that we can see in these right-hand columns. So going back to the service landscape, we can now take a look at what it would look like after running a complexity algorithm. So this version shows a heat-mapped view of the same service landscape, and it now has colored markers on the top right corners of the business domains. As you can see from the legend at the bottom, this shows how many applications the business domain connects to and how many departments each business domain connects to. The colored markers are actually derived using a no-code algorithm, which we will cover in more detail later. But what the algorithm does is it leverages the underlying graph structure of objects connected to other objects and calculates the values behind these colored markers in real time. They also dynamically update, and that means that as the underlying data and relationships change, these will be recalculated and the colors would automatically update too. In this case, they're colored green to red to indicate a low number of connections versus a high number of connections. So IT management connects to a high number of both applications and departments, whereas human resources connects to a fewer applications and departments, and that's why the colors are green there. Payments has a high number of applications and a medium number of departments connected to it. And we can click into this service and drill down to see a dashboard specific to this service. This is a dashboard for check processing, which is a service domain that sits under the payments business domain, which comes under cross-product operations, and that also comes under operations and execution. So it sits at the fourth level hierarchically. Over on the right, we have the service domain drill down. So we have the service domain at the left here, and then you can see it calls various processes in the middle. And these then also call various other service domains. So we can see that check processing indirectly connects to cash management and account services within trade banking, and also payment initiation within servicing. In addition, the processes connect to various data entities at the bottom here. So you can see where check details are issued or processed or rejected. And all of this information comes out of the box with BIAN. But it can be personalized, as we have done in this example, where we have connected the service to applications and to departments that are personal to the organization. And this is where the algorithm and colored markers on the previous dashboard are derived. Here you can see this service connects to one department, and it also has a connection to one application here. And these connections will be summed and rolled up to the parent business domain, which will then display a colored marker. And this is exactly the task that enterprise architects will be responsible for when implementing BIAN, as they will be given all the services by the framework, but it will be up to the architects to connect the services to the underlying applications and infrastructure within their organizations. We can also make use of a tree map visualization to drill into the same data in a slightly different way. I can click into operations and execution, then cross-product operations, and then payments. And here we can see the distribution of services within this domain. And here they're sized and colored according to their complexity. I can also click into this service to view a Sankey diagram, which shows the department on the left that connects to the service, the application that it connects to colored in purple, and various processes that it connects to in pink. In this case, they are all sized equally, but we could run a cost attribution algorithm to show where costs flow through this model, and we could size the sections of the Sankey according to the cost. There are, however, other attributes that have been captured on applications, and we can take a look at those on the next dashboard. So this is an applications dashboard, and here we can see a list of the applications and their properties such as criticality, recommendation, stage, and type. And then in the last two columns, we are showing the relationships from service domains to applications, and from departments to applications. Again, this is where the algorithm that gave us the heat map counts the number of relationships to a given service. For example, you can see production release in 2 places here. So when the algorithm runs, it will give production release a complexity of 2 as it connects to 2 applications. This catalog is actually editable, and I can quite easily add a new row just by clicking the green button here. And then I could add a new application. I can change where it sits. And I can change various properties such as the criticality, the type, the recommendation, and the stage. And that gets added as a new row. We can take a look at one of the other rows, for example, ABACUS. And here we haven't connected it to any service domains or departments, but I can add in some relationships. ABACUS is a strategic application, so I can connect it to a strategy service and also the strategy and operations department. So now that I have added in those relationships, we may want to revisit the criticality, and I can simply change this to 5. You may have noticed that once I changed the criticality, the pie chart over on the right automatically updated. And I'll change one other one to 5 so we can see that update once again. And now I can actually use this pie chart as a way to filter the rest of the views. So I can click on the slice for 5, and it filters all the rest of the views to just those applications with a criticality of 5. Then here we have the department which owns the application, and I've actually associated an email address for the head of each department, which gives me this chat icon. So if I wanted to, I could start a conversation with someone who is the head of this department. And this will open up Microsoft Teams, and now I can have a conversation with my colleague who is the head of that department about their particular application. So as we can see from the recommendation column, some of these applications are marked for retirement, whilst others are to be retained. And we can now go over to another dashboard, which Tim will cover, to view the roadmap of these applications.
Yeah, thank you, Manisha. So obviously what we're seeing is that you can manage any numbers of properties, or what you might refer to as metadata, around any kind of object. So in this case, we're looking at what you might call an application catalog. The first list that Manisha showed you with the service landscape, with the 311, I think it was, services, they're all just kind of lists of things, okay? Now, ABACUS is highly configurable, which means you can add any new fields you like. So some of the things that we do is obviously you get something like BIAN off the shelf, and off the shelf it has a lot of great content into it. But then what you want to do with ABACUS and as an enterprise architect is extend that. Okay, so in the first place, you extend the business architecture with an IT architecture, which is where you put in these applications. And of course, it's just an indicative list here. You'll end up with hundreds. You probably have a spreadsheet, so you'll pull that in. Whatever fields you have in your spreadsheet, or whatever columns you have in your spreadsheet, or whatever properties you like to have, can all be added to the repository. And the repository will basically adapt to whatever it is that you have. We can then actually do a bit of a mashup. You can merge different meta models together. So you might like the properties from one other framework that they use for doing application management, or in this case, road mapping. So you might add those. So you can drag and drop things from different libraries and create a hybrid pretty quickly. Okay, so here what Manisha's done is we've extended the off-the-shelf BIAN with, in this case, a section of date properties. Okay, and so you can see on the right there's 5 columns. Not all of them have values, of course, that's fine, but there's ostensibly a start date, so some date that the application maybe comes onto your radar and you start evaluating it, all the way through to when it goes into production, and then ultimately potentially end of life. So this is a timeline. Okay, so now what you're looking at is essentially a chronology or a life cycle of how this asset, in this case an application, but remember this can be done for any object at all. And then we can visualize these things. So on the left, you see what's a Gantt chart. You'll see it's familiar. It obviously shows time across horizontally. And as Manisha drills inside, she can go inside the business areas. Now, the first thing to notice here is, of course, it's rolling up dates at a higher level. So the interesting thing here is, as Manisha showed, applications are things that are being used by services. So what we can do actually is we can attribute the dates for the applications that are involved in delivering a service and present them at the service level. So what that grey bar you see there, and the range, the start and end of that grey bar, that's the ends of when any of the underlying applications must start being evaluated, all the way through to when the last application is retired. So as Manisha draws inside one of these bars, you'll see, of course, the bar jump to the top there. I know it's a bit tricky to see, but now what you're seeing is the underlying bars that made up that top level bar. So now you've got, I think we're at level 3, aren't we, Manisha? And where are we down the hierarchy now? I think those.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. So now we're at level 3. So we're still in the process hierarchy or the service hierarchy. Okay. But as we drill a bit further from the process hierarchy, what we'll start getting down to is now down to applications. So there it is. So in this case, it was a single application, Splunk. You can see the color gradients there that match, of course, the color gradients we show for the life cycle of the, in this case, application. But all of those values were being rolled up all the way, in this case, back to the service layer. So as Manisha kind of zooms back out a bit slowly, you'll see that these bars all sort of join together. So there was Splunk, of course, that made one of the bars. And now as we go up further, that IT management bar is just a bigger picture. So it's kind of like you're going up the tree and showing this full range of life cycles without doing anything more than managing dates down on some object that you know. So in this case, applications. Okay, so life cycles are a thing that you can manage on any object you like. But what ABACUS lets you do is leverage your graph structure. So the fact that you have applications connected to other things, whether they're services, whether it's the department that owns them, you know, heaven forbid, down to the infrastructure that it runs on. And you can leverage those interconnectivities to be able to reason about things in other areas of your repository. So that's one of the real strengths here. So obviously we're visualizing that through a Gantt chart or a roadmap here, but nonetheless, you're managing content where you know and you have confidence over it. And as Manisha showed, that catalog there could be, you know, outsourced essentially to your application management team. Okay, so you're democratizing the way this is done. Obviously, they can manage it directly here in ABACUS, or you can round trip with Excel spreadsheets. You can put it in Google Sheets or any number of other approaches. But what you're ultimately doing is collaborating and allocating this work out to the people who have the information, and then the architecture team can work alongside them to do, you know, value add to that. Okay, so that's also, I guess, on road mapping there. So we've talked about algorithms, okay, and Manisha sort of walked you through the logic of the complexity algorithm back on the service landscape where we did the heat maps. So if you remember, there were the red dots and the green dots, red being a lot of connections, green being fewer connections. Where does that come from? You saw the process diagram that showed obviously services connected to applications and departments. Manisha showed you how you could be managing those connections through catalogs. Okay, so you've got to remember that you don't have to draw lines on diagrams to connect things. Okay, you can manage content through catalogs and basically, you know, like foreign keys kind of thing. Like you're filling in a connected component. Like when Manisha updated the ABACUS row in the catalog, she said that it was delivering a corporate strategy service and it was owned by the Strategy and Operations Department. So now what we're looking at here, though, is the underlying logic that we're using in our algorithm. So Manisha mentioned no-code algorithms. So that portlet at the top right there, that's the no-code algorithm. So there's various primitives here. We don't have time to go into the way the block-based coding works, and we can do other presentations on that. I think there's webinars on that we've already got that we can provide. But ultimately what you're doing is you're leveraging the interconnections or the graph that you have, taking properties somewhere and maybe aggregating them, maybe attributing them. In this case, what we're simply doing is a count. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking the business domains, we're then looking at the applications that are connected to those business domains, and that gives us a complexity property. But then what we're doing, and we've laid out the algorithm in a way that sort of hopefully resonates with the way the model is structured. So we're taking from the business domain and the applications on the business domain, we're aggregating, and we call it attribution, but we're aggregating up the hierarchy. You can see one of the checkboxes in there is the target is the parent. So we're essentially going up the hierarchy, and then we're writing the resulting value at the level above business domains. Okay, so Manisha, forgive me, what's the level above business domains again?
It's the business area, so these are the business areas.
Exactly. So what's happening there is obviously a collection of business domains, all have applications, and so you might have 2 connected to one, 3 connected to another, 5 connected to another. So you're taking 2 plus 3 plus 5 and getting 10, of course, at the top level. So that's what Manish is showing again on the left there is the 5 levels of hierarchy all the way down the stack. And so obviously we're only showing one of the children components here each time, and that's where you get your 0, 1, 2, 8, 9 as you go up the stack. Do you want to walk through the bar chart there, Manisha? Is that?
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, so you can, once you have these business areas with their complexity, their overall complexity, we can actually drill into these. So it may look familiar. It's actually using the same structure that we had in the service landscape. So we go into operations and execution, then cross-product operations. And once again, we can go into payments. And we can see the different bars for the different service domains underneath there, along with their complexity, their total number of applications per service domain. This level's the per business domain. And then at the top, you have the number of applications per business area. So we'll just go through a couple more slides. So I'll flick back to the presentation. And over to you, Tim.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. So I know that we have some time in your calendar and everything, and so we certainly, I can see fair few questions have come through in the chat window, so we'll get to those in a second. So yep, now's your chance, of course, to put any questions in the chat window that you want us to address, and I'll read through those and we'll address those. So we've got a little bit of time. But yep, what we wanted to sort of introduce you to, or certainly offer to you guys, is we're hosting a digital summit in about a month's time, where we'll be running through lots of different topics. So go to that website, register your interest in it. There'll be presentations by people in Avolution, other people from outside of the company as well. So it's really an online conference that we want to try and host and have as many people join us, because we do have a global community here, but we want you guys to start sharing your ideas with each other, and we'll do some kind of expert sort of sessions and things like that about how we think things can be done, sort of similar to this BIAN one. We might in fact rerun it then. We'll wait and see what the interest is, but yeah, a whole host of sessions online. So go to that website. We're going to provide the slides to all you guys who've registered interest in this, so you'll have the link obviously in the slides to click it. You'll probably find it on our website anyway. I'm sure it's one of the banner ads, but yeah, we look forward to obviously virtually spending time with you all in about a month's time. I think physically, yep, Amsterdam. So again, any of you who are involved in the open group, we'll be there. We go to most of their events, so we'll be over in Amsterdam again in about a month's time, a bit less than that. So virtually you can see us at the Digital Summit. Physically you can see us at this event. We'll have a booth there, and we can obviously do live demos for you and talk about whatever your challenges are, and help you guys navigate the beautiful future ahead. Manisha's got her contact details there, so make sure you email Manisha any other questions you have as well. I think with that, Manisha, are we good to start taking some questions?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, good, great. I think the way we'll play it here, so remember, type the questions in the chat window. There's about 10 already, so trust me, it'll take us a bit of time to get through them. Start adding some more if you need to. I'll read it out, and then I guess between Manisha and I, we'll decide who's going to answer it. You should all be able to see the chat window, so you should be able to see the questions there. Anyway, the first one we have from Joe, and it says, can we retrospectively add the BIAN services into an existing ABACUS model? If so, do we replace our existing services or use a combination of both? Okay, good question. Do you want me to take that one, Manisha?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, cool. So I guess the answer is yes, of course you can. So BIAN, and as Manisha sort of talked you through, there's over 300 services in a hierarchically decomposed tree with lots of metadata in there. So of course you can pull those in, and that's a library that you can pull into any of your ABACUS projects that you have. Okay, so you will now have 300 plus components in a hierarchical tree with a whole lot of content. Furthermore, those objects are connected to information elements. okay, and things like that. So there's more than just the process hierarchy. So you certainly can pull that into a repository. There's no problem with doing that. Now the fun begins, because what you have to, and so ABACUS will just adapt to that. It'll add that object type. It'll merge it with an existing object type if there's one literally called the same thing. But needless to say, you can get the content in very easily. Now the fun begins, because it might overlap with an existing services model. Okay, and that's what you're alluding to. So let's say you're already using an IT services model like ITIL or something like that. Okay, there's going to be some overlap. So then ABACUS lets you merge those elements together. Okay, now these are pretty advanced operations. Manisha mentioned the kind of distinction between ABACUS Studio and ABACUS Enterprise. The challenge with what you're doing now is very much a meta modeling challenge. Okay, so really what you're going to do is have to resolve those, same but difference. So now you can merge things together. Okay, you now need to resolve duplicates and things like that, and ABACUS has various techniques to help you do that, okay, and reconcile any overlap. But fundamentally, yes, you can blend architectures together. Now, one of the phrases that we like to use, though, when you're starting to merge meta models, okay, because this is what you're doing, you're merging meta models together. You could slap, BIAN together with BPMN and add a bit of TOGAF. That's all very easy to do. It takes you a minute in ABACUS, right? Just drag and drop. But what you've got to be careful not to do is create a Frankenstein. Right? We talk about a Frankenstein meta model, one that has, like the left arm is TOGAF, the right arm is, UML or something, that your legs are ITIL. So you've got to be very careful you don't just end up with a whole lot of disjoint parts. Okay, so that's the experience we have. We've been doing this for 20 years, and because we've had a very configurable repository, we've had to work with people to come up with these hybrid meta models. So we've probably got a hybrid already that overlaps the things you're thinking of. Okay, so just because you can doesn't mean you should. The old Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility one-liner. So we certainly can do it, and anyone can do it, Joe. So I guess that's the answer, is yes, you can. But word of caution is you probably want to have some of us help you think about the complications or the implications of doing that. That was a long answer to a short question. Okay, you ready for the next question? Sorry, is there anything you want to add to that, Manisha? Sorry, I was just...
No, I would just agree. So I think it's about merging the services with the existing services that an organization may already have. So you may find that some overlap, and you want to take the BIAN ones and merge them with the ones that you already have in your organization.
Yep. No, excellent. Okay, the next question is from a very cryptically named E008496. Is it on the cloud version only, or can be downloaded to on-premise ABACUS installations? It's both. So basically, the BIAN, we call it a library, is shipped with the on-premise products that you have. So you simply could just go new and file, standard library BIAN. Having said that, BIAN is constantly updating. Okay, so I know that BIAN's 8.0 just came out recently, so we have that. So depending on what version of ABACUS you have, of course, you might need to go to our community and download the latest library. Okay, so you can do that. So we're always putting later versions on the community. Of course, in the next desktop release that we do, we will bundle any of those things in, so you would get it in the desktop. But you might have to go to the community to get it. Of course, the cloud versions are all updated. So any of the cloud clients, they get all the latest and greatest, whatever it may be. So certainly just talk to your account manager, I guess, about whether you need to go to the community to get it, or obviously if you're a cloud client, they'll point you in the right direction about where to find it.
And I'd just add that, so I was demonstrating mainly ABACUS Enterprise today. So ABACUS Studio is the other product that I didn't actually demonstrate, but that is where all the heavy lifting would be done. And as Tim said, you can access that either via the cloud or an on-premise installation of ABACUS.
Great. Okay, the next question is from Amy. Is it possible to incorporate the BIAN framework using the ArchiMate notation within ABACUS? Well, there's three acronyms. Yes. So I guess the important thing is ArchiMate's a notation. I know that we get caught up a lot more about what it could be because there's a meta model behind the scenes, but primarily it's a notation. The boxes are always the same shape exactly every time, regardless of where they're used. So it's a notation. So the notation we've used in the BIAN framework is the generic one that is provided by the standards box. everybody, but there's nothing to stop you replacing any of the notational aspects with ArchiMate. And in fact, that's been done. The BIAN have a version of that already. So yep, so certainly you've got to sort of see the different levels here. There's basically what is a notation, which are the basic boxes and lines you want to use. And again, Abacus can use any box and line you want. You can import shapes from Visio and just use those. You can use any notation you want, but the notation is quite separate to the meta model. So technically, ArchiMate does not have a thing called service landscape. It does not have a thing called business domain. So now you're having to try to stereotype or augment ArchiMate to repurpose some of the things that ArchiMate has into basically the concepts that BIAN has. And that may or may not work well, right? So square pegs, round holes. It's entirely possible that there just isn't a construct in ArchiMate that BIAN requires. So now you've got to add something, okay? So again, ArchiMate primarily a notation. So of course you can retrofit the notation onto any meta model you like, but does it have a faithful mapping is your big question there. We're agnostic. We don't care. We'll happily use any notation. We'll happily use any meta model. We tend to have every client configure their own anyway to basically work out how they like to present to their stakeholders. We do get mixed feedback on ArchiMate, whether it's a good notation for business stakeholders. But yeah, anyway, we're just the messenger there. We'll happily do anything.
And I will just add that previously, prior to version 8, BIAN was represented using the UML notation. So as Tim said, you can certainly use BIAN with any notation. So previously it was, you may have been familiar with the UML notation for BIAN, but now they've moved to using more of an ArchiMate notation.
Yeah, great. All right, so the next question we have is, where have we got it? It's from Kishore M. Does this framework have an associated information data model, or is it only services that can be linked to applications? So yes, it does. Maybe, Manish, is it worth jumping back to that diagram that shows the process going down to, I don't know if they're called information elements. What are they called again? Check processing, I think. Processing. Yeah. Do you want to just walk that through? It's stuff down the bottom there, right?
Yes, absolutely. So these are, we've represented them as data entities, but yes, these do come out of the box with BIAN. So for each process, they will have associated entities with that process. So yes, that does come out of the box. In fact, the applications don't come out of the box with BIAN. So this is one area that you would have to customize specific for your organization. And once again, you could add in additional data entities if you needed to.
The other thing I'd add to that is that, and I'm sort of reading the subtlety of your question. First and foremost, I'm not sure if you asked this before. Manisha showed this picture, so don't worry. You can, of course, create relationships between anything you like. So here we're not showing relationships between these data entities and the applications, okay? But that's a pretty standard thing that a lot of repositories have. And you'll often have an operation which is usually CRUD, create, read, update, delete. What is the data operation that a given application is making on a data entity? Okay, so you certainly could have that. Again, because BIAN doesn't have applications out of the box, you're free to now add how you would like to use applications. So here we're, of course, showing applications being mapped to services, but, of course, applications are owned by departments. Applications provide data operations to data entities. As you saw, applications have roadmaps. So you're really free to be able to integrate or connect applications in any way you like. Now, again, remember, we've done this before. We've built hybrid repositories. So the repository will have that connection probably already. We're just not showing it here in terms of just a simple example. Okay. Anything else there, Manisha? Sorry.
No, nothing else to add.
Yep, cool. Okay, so we have one now has asked, how do we enter the apps? Does Abacus come with popular apps built in? Yeah, good question. So Manish, again, I'm not sure when these questions were asked. Sorry, apologies. I don't know if it was before Manisha showed adding an application in the application catalog. So the recommended practice there, again, depends how you want to approach this. If you already have a list of applications, right, in a spreadsheet, in a SharePoint list, Google Sheet, there's a bulk upload. So we would absolutely advocate you do a bulk upload. Abacus will adapt to whatever columns you've got. Okay, so you're never going to have this, square pegs in a round hole. We talk about, there's, the usual thing which you talk about is ETL, extract, transform, load. There is no transform. Okay, you literally can just extract, load. Okay, so it's incredibly quick to get content into an ABACUS repository. Now, the quality of the content, we may be, not making a real judgment call on. ABACUS then has these data quality things that can start to improve that. You can start putting data quality metrics in and start to put, constraints around, whether things, need to be completed or not, what data types they need to be. So you can do a lot of the data cleansing inside ABACUS, but ultimately you have to ask yourself where's the master? Okay, so if ABACUS is the master, then of course make the effort inside ABACUS. If ABACUS isn't the master, make the effort in the third-party list you've got. So we can plug into CMDBs like ServiceNow. One of the real beauties of the way we integrate with other products, because ABACUS is flexible and configurable, we will use a third-party repository's unique ID. Now, what that means is they won't have to change anything at all. We can manage however they've done things in ABACUS itself. Okay, so we don't need to require any third-party repository to add any fields like an ABACUS ID. We don't care. We'll use their ID as the master. And what that means is, of course, ABACUS becomes a bit of a hub. Okay, you can use it to pull together all these different sources of information, and ABACUS then becomes that one interconnected source of truth. Okay, now to the second part of your question, which is, does it come with popular apps? Yeah, we have libraries. We have libraries of lots of things. Again, if you've used ABACUS, the trial version, there's an example project in there which has, many different reference content in there. You could get into a whole discussion about what is an application as well, okay? Because meta models take a few different positions on that. Is it really a platform service or is it an application? So again, we have reference models of a whole host of platform services, infrastructure services, okay? So all of your web server technologies and all of your database technologies and things like that, they're all in there out of the box in ABACUS. You get all those as libraries. We have integrations with Technopedia. Okay, so I'm sure you guys know of Technopedia. It's I don't know how many records there are now, millions and millions of records of technologies. So again, you can harvest that content to build a repository very quickly with accurate information. So yeah, we would never advocate that you start from a blank canvas and start just filling things in. You'll have information to hand. So try to pull that information together very quickly and then go through all the sanity checks and then obviously start doing things with it. Okay, anything, Manisha, you want to add to that? Or
so just when you were going through the road mapping dashboard, a lot of those dates would come from one of the integrations such as Technopedia, where you can pull in dates such as end of life dates, end of support, extended end of support dates.
Yep, no, sorry, good, yeah, thanks for that. All right, we'll try and speed up a little bit here, sort of time's against us. Okay, so Andreas has asked if we're a member of BIAN. So yeah, I don't know if you're with BIAN, Andreas. I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you on that. I mean, I obviously know that we've got the content and we've supported it. I'm not sure how it works with the membership side of things, but I'll get someone to kind of reach out to you about that. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just a techie, obviously. All right, so from Ollie, we've got, does ABACUS have reference models for any other industries? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so obviously this is banking, or banking and finance in general. So yeah, there's others. I mean, there's things like ACORD, which is obviously an insurance reference model. There's various ones in the power generation side of things. We've got ones in, heaven knows, consumer goods. So yeah, there's lots of different reference models. I guess the quick kind of take on that is reference models generically mean, of course, content you can reuse. So that tends to be a bit of a matrix. Okay, so there'll be industry reference models, which are the verticals. So like BIAN is banking. There's ones for insurance, and there's ones for utilities, and there's ones for FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. There's ones for automotive industry. There's frameworks like PCF out there. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the process classification framework from APQC. So they have industry reference models, and again, we support all those. So you can use any of those generic ones. But the whole other dimension to reference models is a horizontal dimension, okay, which is sort of what I was alluding to with those applications concept. Is there's reference models from things like TOGAF, which are a whole technical reference model, okay, and they have hundreds upon hundreds of different horizontal kind of things like platform services and database technologies and firewalling technologies and stuff like that, which is generic, okay, and it's potentially used by every industry. So I guess that's the way to think about it. Yes, the short answer is yes, ABACUS has loads of them, and yeah, we try our best, and like Manisha said with the Technopedia integration, we try our best to obviously not reinvent the wheel and try to reuse what's already out there. So yeah, anything, Manisha, from you?
Just that we have integrations with we have frameworks for capability-centric architectures, including, as you mentioned, PCF and also BizBook. And that was one of the other questions about how can BIAN be implemented together with a capability-centric architecture.
Yeah, good on you. That's the next question. Yep, excellent. Well, good, we can skip that. Let's just do Victor's question before that. How do we keep the metadata and the underlying model up to date as the landscape continually changes? Yep, again, I'm not sure when you asked this, Victor, but the idea is you're using the enterprise product like you saw Manisha do. So obviously you can be updating anything in there you like, and you configure the catalogs, as we call them. They're basically just tabular views, but they're not just a dumb table. They are a connected repository where you can add rows, you can connect to other collections of things. It's portfolio management, okay, and that portfolio includes the interrelationships between things. So that's absolutely the best way to keep it up to date. You can embed Abacus within your collaboration tools like Slack and Teams. So we're a Microsoft partner, so we certainly do it all within Teams. That gives you all the authentication and the SSO side of things. So your business users will just go to a tab in Teams and start working on a catalog. They don't even have to, assuming they've been pre-entered in the work groups and whatever. So it's very easy. The onboarding process is very easy for people, and they don't even necessarily know they're using Abacus, right? It doesn't matter. They just realize that they're maintaining or managing their collection of things. So the metadata, you can have as many columns as you want. Think of it like online spreadsheets, right? That's basically Abacus. The catalogs are just whatever metadata you like, and people can be maintaining it right there. We'd also, of course, try to advocate you plug it into other repositories that have that. So that's all your integrations and stuff like that, like Manisha talked about with your ServiceNows and things like that. Anything I missed there, Manisha?
No, nothing else to add.
Okay, I've got Ram's question, because you already did the BIAN one. Ram's question is, how is it different from ArchiMate? Okay, it's kind of hard for me to compute that. ArchiMate's a notation, so Abacus supports ArchiMate. We're a ArchiMate certified tool, so ArchiMate's generic. It doesn't have any content, if you know what I mean. It's just a notation that says, with a meta model. So yeah, so you can certainly use the ArchiMate notation with BIAN if you want. That's fine. I think BIAN's pretty agnostic about that. We are as well. So ArchiMate's fine. I mean, we've obviously got other notations that we found resonate a bit better with business stakeholders. But yeah, if you're an ArchiMate fan, then that's fine. You can do that. Patrick's question, the meta model 8.0 is expressed in ArchiMate, and okay, fine, that's just a statement. We sort of showed that as well, so that's cool. Okay, right, and the other questions are sort of, so whoever it is, yeah, I'll get your account manager to talk about it. I'm not sure. They may not have uploaded it, actually, good point. It only came out recently, so certainly I'll talk to the guys about that. Last one, does Abacus support workflow? Yeah, so I mean, workflow is a very broad topic. So certainly there's alerts, there's all these email things, there's a gated process where people can change something, but the changes are only pending, waiting for someone to approve them, all that good stuff. So certainly as people do things, you have a whole governance process that you can configure. It ships out of the box with some pretty standard tri-state governance processes, but absolutely you can configure that and work out how it is you want to kind of step through the process to get good quality content into Abacus, including the ability to hide content entirely until it's approved. Okay, so Abacus has a full, again, create, read, update, delete permissions model where stuff can be quarantined in a sandbox or quarantined in a staging area before anything is even made public to any other stakeholders, and once it's passed whatever quality checks that you want to have. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. So I think with that, Manisha, I guess we'll bring it to a close. Any final comments you have, I guess?
Just that we will send an email version of the slides, and we can provide a recording of the webinar also. Brilliant.
Okay, look, thank you, everyone. Obviously, we've got 10 minutes early to go and get lunch for some of you in the UK, and eat your lunch if I guess you're in Europe, have breakfast if you're in America. So yeah, look, thank you, everyone, for your time. It's been a pleasure. And remember, keep an eye out for that digital summit. We're doing it in about a month, and we'll do some more sessions like this for everyone. Great. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.